YouTube, welcome back. I don't know how many characters you've been leveling in patch 1.1. I've leveled one main character and one secondary character, so I've done alternate leveling one time so far. I've made a video in the past talking about how to skip the campaign. We have dungeons, and you can skip through the dungeons. You can do multiplayer stuff. You can use the new Glyphs of Envy and the new Harbinger's Needles. And there's all these tools for how to get to Empowered Monoliths and how to spin up your second and your third and your fourth and your 10th character as fast as possible. This video is not the best method because I don't know what the best method is. For me, I'm a solo player. I don't play with friends. I play SSF. I play COF for what that matters, in case that matters. And this is what I do for spinning up my secondary characters. I did this once so far. It felt great. And I talk with a lot of people in Discord and in Twitch chat about my experiences. So this seems to be something that people will enjoy. It seems to have worked for other people. So let's talk about it for what I do as well. First of all, if you don't know what twink gear is, it still makes me giggle every time I think about twink gear. But so twink gear, we want gear that makes us move as fast as possible. Quite frankly, anything that has like a bunch of movement speed, there's a handful of unique items that have really high damage on them at a really low level. So at level 4, this is just about the best one-handed sword that you can get. It has cold penetration, and it has, I guess, doesn't have cold damage, does it? Yeah, it doesn't have cold damage. But it's got a whole bunch of damage on it. It's a good base type earlier than you can normally use it. Something like this with LP on it would cost you very little time to create, and it would go a long way in making your leveling experience feel nice and smooth. So getting some like low required level items like Iruin's Penance, like a Quicksilver ring, like any kind of boots that have movement speed on them as well. What's that ring that has movement speed on it? Oh, can we find it fast enough? Where's that one ring that I'm thinking of? I should have done this at a time. Arboreal circuit. Go make some arboreal circuits that have life and physical resistance on them. Or just something that makes you nice and fast, gives you some extra damage. You want your secondary character to have as much damage as possible. So, whatever that means for you, you can do that. Personally, I actually hate using twink gear, but the rest of this is going to be much more relevant to you, okay? So, what do you do in terms of progression? Where do you spend your time when you're leveling your secondary characters? I made a video about this in the past. This is what I like to do. I do not use dungeons in order to skip the campaign. There are a handful of dungeons. There's Soulfire Bastion, there's the Lightless Arbor, and when EHG put these dungeons into the game, they allow you to skip parts of the campaign and come out in other places, which sounds like it's a faster way of leveling. In something like Path of Exile, it would make sense, because you need to get to the end of the campaign in order to start doing your monoliths. Your maps. In Last Epoch, you do not, which means the entire paradigm is a little bit different in Last Epoch than it is in PoE. You only need to be like level 15. You need to show up to the end of time. You need to get your mastery, become a druid or a beast master or whatever, and then you can just start doing monoliths if you want to. You're going to be underpowered, you're going to be weak, you might even die, and you're not going to have a lot of fun, but you could. So you don't need to beat Chapter 9 in order to start doing monoliths. So what should you do instead? I use the campaign in order to focus on the bottom left corner of my screen, which is all of these passive point rewards and these idle slot rewards. I like to get 15 out of 15 and 8 out of 8, and then I start doing my monolith. What does that mean? Well, it means that I never do Chapter 8. That's the TLDR. I do all of my quests. I do the normal campaign, and I go all the way through the Divine Era, and you start getting those Wengari guys, and you go to the Tundra, and you go to the Temple of Heorot, and then you go all the way to the Tomb of Morditis, and there's that tree that stomps on the ground, and it's kind of toxic for melee, and then Grail is standing next to you, and he's like, "Oh, tell me all about the Immortal Emperor." All right, so for those of you who care about lore, it's the Stompy Tree guy, right? After that, after you kill the Stompy Tree boss, you do not need to go any farther in the campaign. That is the end of the campaign for all intents and purposes. If you watch Heorot die and you watch the animation of the flowers blooming around him, that's optional. You never need to watch that. If you're a brand new player, go ahead and watch it. chapter 8, chapter 9, they're pretty. Go ahead and watch them. Twink leveling as fast as possible. You never need to do anything past the Stompy Tree boss. Because at the Stompy Tree boss, you now have access to as many side quests as you need in order to fulfill your 15 out of 15 and your 8 out of 8 in the bottom left corner of my screen right here. That's why Stompy Tree boss matters so much. So I don't do any dungeon skips. I do Stompy Tree boss, and then I start doing monoliths. Of note, you will have your Merchant's Guild or your COF, because you get those in chapter 1 right when you walk into town, but you won't have the bazaar and you won't have the observatory. We'll get to that. I promise. Be patient. So when you start doing your Monoliths of Fate, there's a new thing that we need to talk about, which is the what's it called? The Glyph of Envy. So Glyph of Envy is a sweet new thing that just got introduced to the game. It's got a lot of text on it. I'm going to dilute this text and make it a lot easier for you to understand. Destabilizes an item, unpredictably change. Okay, so here's what a Glyph of Envy actually does. You use it in Empowered Monoliths to kill bosses faster. The only thing this thing does is if you want to kill Heorot, the boss of the level 90 Monolith, the Reign of Winter, the Age of Winter timeline, if you want to kill that boss 10 times in a row, Glyph of Envy will help you kill that boss 10 times in a row. That's the only thing it does. It's not used for crafting, and in my opinion, I would not use it in normal monoliths. There's two things to talk about. In normal monoliths, you could either use Glyph of Envy, or you could not use Glyph of Envy. To me, and in my experience so far, my limited experience, I feel that with a Glyph of Envy, you can instantly complete all of your timelines. If you have the power to kill the boss, you just go boss, empowered, which sounds good. However, that would mean that you start doing empowered content at level 55 or so. Maybe even before level 55. Maybe even like level 50. It's going to be a slog. Unless you're playing a really strong build and you have lots of gear, you still need levels. And the experience is the real thing that's holding you up. Also, you just used like 5 Glyphs of Envy that you didn't necessarily have to use because you still need experience. Your character is just not that strong yet. So what I did and what I liked, it felt good, and I would recommend it to you as well, is that during your normal monoliths, just do your normal monoliths. So that means you would go up the right side. You would not use any Glyphs of Envy. Don't do anything on the left. Don't do Fall of the Empire. Don't do Blood, Frost, and Death. Don't do Stolen Lance. Only progress up the right side. And then, once you do your first level 90 monolith, you'll fight a Harbinger. It will be a difficult encounter. And then after you defeat that Harbinger, you instantly gain access to Empowered Monoliths. So your character will be about level 76, maybe level 77. If you're a new player or an inexperienced player, your character might be higher level than that. But for me, my character is about level 75 or 76 around that period of time, which is coincidentally about the time when you get level 20 skills. So you'll have like fully fleshed out skills at that point. So at that point, the Harbingers, it's going to be a little bit hard. You're not going to one-shot the Harbinger. Your next 5 levels or so, after you get to Empowered Monoliths, will be a little bit hard. You're not going to one-shot monsters. You still need to like naturally progress your character, get a few more skill points, get some more gear, get those higher level base types that you don't quite have access to yet. But then you can start just doing normal monoliths like always. This is a lot of talking, but I'm going to summarize it real quick. How would you level your twink characters? Get twink gear with LP on them. Get a bunch of damage and a bunch of movement speed so that you have fun. Don't do any campaign skips. Don't do any dungeon skips or anything like that. Do all of the campaign until the Stompy Tree boss, which was the end of chapter 7. Do not do chapter 8. You will never fight Lagon in the campaign. Start doing monoliths. Don't use any Glyphs of Envy. I don't think they're worth it because you need to get experience anyways, and you might as well get experience along the way. And quite frankly, the normal monolith experience is pretty fast. It really doesn't take that much time. The worst part in the past was the level 90s, but you only have to do one of them now, which really alleviated a lot of that boredom, in my opinion. So that's about it. I said that I was going to come back to the Merchant's Guild versus COF stuff. At some point, you will find a Temporal Sanctum key, but of course, this is a twink character for you, so you probably have 100 of these sitting in your stash at some point. So you can get to whatever level you want. Quite frankly, I would do this around the time that I enter Empowered Monoliths. So maybe right before, right after you fight that Harbinger, I would grab one of these keys, I would right click on it, click, and then I would go do Temporal Sanctum, and this would unlock the waypoints into Chapter 9. This means that you skip doing Chapter 8, you never fight Lagon during the campaign, because that's Chapter 8, and in Chapter 9, after you do the first quest in Chapter 9, the first quest in Chapter 9, you will be given the quest line to walk past the observatory or to walk past the bazaar, and that's when you get the waypoint for the observatory or the bazaar. So you can either continue on and kill the boss of Chapter 9, that gives you +1 to all attributes, or you could just stop right here and be happy enough with getting access to the waypoint for the observatory or for Merchant's Guild stuff. That's what I do. So I don't use Glyph of Envy, and I don't use Harbinger's Needles because they don't really fit in with twink leveling. As a real quick aside, Harbinger Needles have amassed in my inventory, and I've never used a single one. I think, I guess if VHE is listening, I think Harbinger Needles, the only use case for them is if your singular goal, and you have no secondary goal, is to push to 2,000 corruption as fast as possible, with disregard to anything else. If that sounds like you, you're probably using Harbinger's Needles well. Maybe? I'm surprised at how little I've been using Harbinger's Needles. I used like 2, I guess. But I really feel no need to ever use one ever again, which is not what I expected when I first started playing patch 1.1. So if you have a different strategy, if you've been leveling up your characters in a different way, let me know. If you got some fast, speedy tech that also allows you to get all of your skill points and your idle slots unlocked while also progressing as a strong character into Empowered Monoliths, I'll take it, because leveling is not as much fun, you know? It's fine. I like leveling a lot more than most people do, I think. But even then, I'd rather just be level 100, blasting content, trying to find far more favor and far more red rings of Atlaria, because I find that to be a lot of fun. That's it. I'll see you next time.